like randomly crazy.
Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm joined here, my good friend Nate Daep from the Pacific Northwest in the Seattle area. Super grateful to have you on here, man. And we've been together through a lot of different things. Got connected in the music scene, and it's been a real blessing to be able to see you kind of evolve as a husband and a father and a business owner, and kind of went from the music scene to the restaurant scene, and would love to hear that story and everything in between. But one cool thing just to get started, we thought it was funny how we knew so many of the same people and we hit it off as friends once we were able to connect. And then we came to find out that not only do we have the same birthday month or the same birthday day, but the exact same year. So we're literally born on the exact same day,
Yeah, man.
which is pretty cool. A very long
Twins,
time ago.
twins, bro.
Birthday twins. So I don't know exactly the time I was born. I'm pretty sure it was Friday night.
I
So
think it was
maybe
around the
that's,
same time, bro.
yeah, maybe that's why we like to
I
party.
was in Africa though.
Dang, I was in Fremont and then I moved to Seattle when I was little. So,
Yeah,
but anyway, Nate, so good to have you, brother. I know we've talked about doing this off and on for years. I found some old footage from the trip you had down here in Monterey. What was that, 10 years ago, 10, 11 years ago
dude,
now? So it was kind
man,
of cool to relive some of that nostalgia. But
ancient.
why don't we start in the beginning? Where did you grow up and how did you get into music?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I was born in Zambia, Africa. Stayed there for about 4 years. Then we moved to LA, and then after that, we stayed there for like a year. Then we went to Washington. That's pretty much where I grew up in Pacific, Washington, small little town.
Okay.
But yeah, music has just been part of my life since I could ever remember, like watching Michael Jackson back in the day and
Yep.
and then of course my dad and his siblings and stuff and my cousins on my dad's side, they're always singing, just singing in the shower, singing.
Yeah, I feel like we grew up in the golden era of music, where we kind of like
Yeah,
our parents' music was still recent, the stuff from the 60s and 70s. And then we kind of grew up in the 80s and 90s and then all the new stuff too. So we've had quite, pretty good spectrum of music that we've been able to
exactly.
be around.
Exactly, man. But I mean, I just remember back in the day, like I'd watch my brothers like listen to the radio and then they would, push record on those little audio tapes.
Yep.
And then like, in order to write the lyrics down, we'd have to like rewind that tape and then write it down and rewind again and write it, write down the lyrics, make
People
sure.
don't, nowadays people call things, they don't realize where the name comes from, right? So people say mixtape, they'll be like, oh yeah, I just came out with a mixtape, but it's just them
Yeah.
rapping and it's like an MP3 or it's on YouTube. A mixtape is literally like a cassette tape
Yeah, cassette tape. Yep.
yeah. So you knew that you like somebody if you took the time, either as a friend or as a crush, if you took the time to make them a custom mixtape, because that was truly a labor of love. I mean, it would
Oh,
take
dude.
time. I used to remember I would record
Oh,
like the top 8 at 8 in our local like radio station, and then try to play
yeah.
because that was the only way you could play them back. Because who had the time and the money to go buy all the albums at the record store? Like, and then you'd have to
Exactly,
wait on the radio
man.
for your song to come on maybe once
For
or twice a
real.
day.
Especially being in elementary.
Yeah, right. Kids these days they don't know the struggle.
No, they don't, man.
Okay.
No, but yeah, I just grew up with it, man. Then in high school, I think that's when I took it a little bit more seriously. I did my first talent show thanks to the homie. I don't know where he is anymore. I don't talk to him. I wish I had his number so I could reach out, but his name is Jason and he was the MC. And he was a new kid at school. He came from a Seattle school, and then we're down south, little south of Seattle. He came from there to our school. I met him, and he was rapping, and then he would just ask me to sing, and I sang, and then he was like, "Dude, you got a good voice, man. Like, you should do the talent show with me."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Man, I don't know if I could do the talent show because I'm like super insecure and so shy,
Yeah, totally.
back then." I was like,
Well,
man, forget it.
we were
I'll do
fortunate
it.
to not only to grow up with all the cool stuff, the old school stuff, but in our era when we were in school, it was like, Boys to Men and then all these other boy bands that came
Yeah,
afterwards. So
dude.
yeah, I remember, thinking about doing the talent show too and stuff for church and just being, like it's one thing to sing on your own or with your friends, but it's another thing to like do it in public. It's just
Yeah.
such a
No,
vulnerable
dude,
thing.
I was so scared, man. And like I decided to do a song. I did April Showers by Drew Hill. That was that was the first
How
song
old were you?
bro. I was in ninth grade, so I was
Oh
what,
man,
maybe 15 or
14, 15, yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, of course, like the whole school is there pretty much. And man, I just remember I just closed my eyes and I just sang. And by the end of the song, I had a standing ovation.
And
And
that's when Nate Vibes was born.
yeah, that was the birth, the rebirth.
The start of the vibes. That's awesome. Well, so
Yeah.
before we get too far in the music, I something I didn't think to ask, but like, how was a Filipino family? What were they doing in Zambia?
Oh yeah. So my dad, he was a supervisor for a mining company in the Philippines.
Ah, okay,
And so they gave him an opportunity to, run his own show in Africa.
awesome.
And yeah, so he took my brothers and my mom there, and then, I magically came out.
That's awesome. So you really are African as well.
I am a citizen, a Zambian
That's
citizen.
so cool. I didn't even know that.
Yeah,
There's
bro.
so many similarities with us because my dad was working here in Silicon Valley in California. Well, first he was working in the fields in agriculture, and then he had the opportunity to do this program where he got into tech at a young age, and all of a sudden he worked his way up. And same thing, he got offered to go run his show because he was going out to Thailand and Singapore to run these like warehouses where they were doing manufacturing like hard drives and robotics and all this kind of tech stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And we were signed up to go. It was just me and my older brother at the time, and my older brother and I have a different mother, and we had our shots and everything. We were like ready to go, passports ready. And at the last minute, my older brother decided he didn't want to go, and my dad didn't want to leave him.
Oh,
So we should have grown up in Thailand, just like you grew up in Zambia. So anyway, it all worked out, but
hey,
it's crazy to think about
hey,
that.
it
Both our
is,
dads got
man.
to offers to run things in different countries.
Right? And then here we are connecting,
It's
like,
crazy.
yeah, God works in some crazy ways, man.
Did your dad end up staying in the same industry when you guys wound up in Washington?
No, he ended up working for Boeing.
Okay,
That's what moved us here was,
nice.
that explosion in the aerospace industry
Yep, yep.
over here in Washington. So yeah, he got an opportunity there, and then we just ended up I'm still here, man. Over 30 years, bro.
Man, your dad's a beast.
Bro, yeah, he
I
did
think
a
I may
lot.
have met your mom once. I don't know if I ever got to meet your dad. I'm not sure, but
I don't think you
I don't know
have.
if I
I'm not sure.
I wouldn't anyway. So all right, back to the talent show. Nate Vibes is born. High school. This is what, late '90s, early 2000s, right?
Yep, yep.
Some good music at that time, some cheesy music
Hmm.
now that we look back on it, but there was some good music.
Oh man, there's
Def
still bangers, bro. Bangers,
Bangers for sure. So who were
dude.
who were you into in high school?
Oh, dude. Drew Hill, 112. Um, later in high school, I stumbled upon Music Soul Child.
Yep.
That was, and then that's kind of where like I felt my my
Yeah,
soul
like
move,
neo soul, neo soul.
Yeah, yeah,
Yep,
yeah.
yep,
Like my
yep,
my my homie, one of my homies would always wear headphones, like, walking around in school,
yep.
and we had this staircase in the middle of the school, and he would just like walk down the staircase spinning his binder with his headphones on. And by the time he got down, I was like, "Hey man, what are you listening to?" And he gave me his headphones, and man, it was like new life, man. When I heard,
Yep.
Music Soul Child, I was like, dude, this is some never heard this before.
Well, I don't know if you remember, but we growing up, we didn't have MTV or Disney Channel. We didn't have cable, and we grew up in church, and so it was like certain things we weren't allowed to watch and all that kind of stuff. But I remember for some reason it got cheaper. Cable got cheaper, and the standards got loosened up by the time I was in high school, I guess. But I remember it was MTV when it used to show music, right? So it was kind of in that era, in the beginning of the 2000s. MTV was switching from music to whatever else they're doing now. These random,
Yeah,
you know, teen pregnancy and challenge of real world and all these other shows that have nothing to do with music, but it's still called music television. So what they started doing is they started putting all the music videos on MTV too, right? And so it'd
right.
be like random. You could watch them in the middle of the night or early in the morning. And I remember
Mm-hmm.
going to school on MTV2. That's how I first saw Alicia Keys. That's how I first saw Music Soul Child, because it was like
Yep.
not going to be on TRL with Carson Daly. None of those songs would be, but they were like, you had to watch them on this other side channel to see them. But that's where the real artists were. That's where,
Exactly.
like, again, like Common, a bunch of the like
Yep.
artists like that that maybe weren't on the mainstream, but they were still really good in those
And if
days.
you couldn't find them, then you go to BET.
BET, yeah, 106 and Park, right? It was like the
Yeah.
the hip hop version of TRL.
Yeah, man. Yeah, those are the days though, man. Yeah, but Music Soul Child definitely brought a big influence. And then Dwele, um, Raheem Devon, all those soul singers, Glenn Lewis,
I was a
man.
big fan of Joe
Oh yeah, Joe
and
for
Brian
sure.
McKnight.
Sure. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Joe was like one of those, he had those songs where you just want to sing on the party line,
Yep.
it, and make that as your little
Well,
voicemail.
my yeah, well, that's another thing kids don't know these days, that before ringtones and like voicemails, you used to just like play a song in the background on your stereo, and then like say
Yeah.
like, hey, what's up, sorry, missed your call, like hit me back, whatever, whatever your stupid message was, but you had to like time it just right. And there's some funny social media like videos that make fun of that era.
Yeah,
But
dude. That
we
that,
did
that
whatever
era
we
was the
had to
best,
do.
man. That era was the best. Very creative.
Yeah, I mean, shit. What are some things you and your boys used to do? Well, we used to do like, like puka shells, and like, make your socks kind of thick to put on the K-Swiss. Some people would do the rubber band at the bottom of their jeans. Like
Oh
some
yeah.
guys were
Lift
wearing
lift
super
lift one
baggy.
pant leg up.
Yeah, the LL Cool J look. Man,
And
looking back, it was pretty ridiculous, but it seemed cool at the time.
put some lines in the eyebrow.
Yep, exactly. I know. And that's also too kind of when like the electronic music was making a comeback, or really, really for the first time, kind of going mainstream. With Daft
Yeah.
Punk and a bunch of stuff like that. It was like,
Well,
okay. So then there was
music
like a whole
music
rave thing.
definitely
Yeah.
brings a lot of creativity and makes you evolve, man.
Well, I grew up in church, and so I love gospel music and I love R&B music, and I could sing all right, but really my voice is more geared towards like alternative music. But I really wanted to have an R&B voice. I just didn't
Yeah.
have the training or you know, and so that was funny. But yeah, just growing up in music, I played it in church, but I didn't really take it seriously in high school. It was all about sports. It was like
Hmm.
was where I was more focused. But let's see. So we got out of high school at the same time. I went to Canada for a couple of years for a church program, and was playing music there for the church, and then kind of came back. But right when I came back and I was working in youth ministry, I it was right when social media was just barely coming out, like MySpace and YouTube. And I want to say it was like oh 05, oh 06, like around that time, oh 07.
Yeah.
And I mean, smartphones were barely coming out, like iPhone 1. I had like a Blackberry, probably still a flip phone. But the reason why I say that is because all of a sudden, instead of like the radio or MTV, all of a sudden music was online.
Yeah. It's shifting.
Right. And so one of our mutual friends that is part of how we met, I think, is Jeremy Passion. I remember because I was a youth leader, and we had this thing back in the day called shoot, what was it called? I forget exactly what it was called, but it was like all the churches would have like a talent show.
Uh-huh.
And so it was like all the churches in Northern California and Nevada went to this church, and like some of them would do plays and skits, some of them would do like songs, some of them would be bands, basically like America's Got Talent, like church version, right?
Yeah.
And we had a little team, and our team did a good job, and we thought we are all cool. And all of a sudden, this random kid with a hat, skinny kid, Filipino kid from San Francisco, gets up there and does his thing. And we're like, everyone was like, who is this guy? So Jeremy, before I knew who he was, before he was Jeremy Patchen, he was just Jeremy from San Francisco, some church in San Francisco, and he must have been in high school. And he just floored everybody. And of course, he won first
Man.
place. And it was like, who is this kid? And then I remember I didn't hear from him for a little while. Then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, as MySpace started taking off and YouTube started taking off, and I was no longer working with the church, but I decided to get into music more. I started playing in some different groups and bands, and it was just like, before you know it, all of a sudden I found him again on YouTube, and I was like, I think that's that guy from that one like talent competition. And sure enough, he's in San Francisco, and it's like, it's got to be him, and I confirmed that it was. But that was kind of the beginning, reconnecting with him, of seeing all this new talent that was coming out there. And a lot of them happened to be kind of Asian from California or from the Pacific Northwest. And all of a
Yeah,
sudden we started learning about algorithms. And so if you like this artist, you probably like this one. All of a sudden, before you know it, and that's pretty much how I found you, probably through YouTube. Yeah, there was just a whole cool roster of like-minded people,
there
and
was.
it was just, if you were there, you know, some went on to do big things, some just kind of stayed there in that little YouTube bubble. But
Yeah,
I want to say '05 to maybe 2015, that was a pretty special time.
there was, man. There was some great moments in that area.
So when you were playing in school, did you join
Oh
a
yeah, yeah.
band? When did
So
you decide
after
to go
that,
online?
after that, I joined a group in high school, R&B group. I actually used to skip school to go to another high school, and I linked up with three other Filipino guys, and it was kind of like making the band.
Yep, yep.
There was like 10 dudes kind of like auditioning for this, group that this DJ was putting together, and it ended up being us four, and then we rocked with that for a long time, man. Like,
And what was that called?
we're called Soldify.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, Soldify, and we're actually number one on MySpace for a little bit. Like, we held it,
Nice.
and I mean, I wish I had a screenshot just to like see it, but
I
to see it
know.
again. But I
Can't
mean,
believe somebody hasn't brought it back yet. It's so nostalgic, you know.
yeah, yeah, no, but it was pretty epic. But yeah, so we went with that, and then we all grew up, man, and people started having kids, and
Yeah.
we just had to do our own thing. Then I decided to take my own solo route, and that was going cool for a little bit. I was able to make a little EP,
Yeah.
like three
Yeah.
songs, and
Yeah.
then I don't know, man, I guess music was just more of a I couldn't really figure out how to do it as a business, you know,
Yeah. A
and
lot of
that was my
artists
struggle, man.
a lot of artists struggle with that, and it made me realize I was a musician, but I didn't feel like I didn't have this burning desire to be the face or the songwriter or the singer, even though I could sing, I could write songs. I just enjoyed being part of the process, being a musician, being in the
Yeah,
room. And so when I realized that there was kind of a missing hole for a lot of these artists, of someone that was like trustworthy and had integrity to kind of take the lead on tour managing and promoting and like helping kind of produce. Because like you said, a lot of artists, they got a good voice, or they're creative, but they're not necessarily a graphic designer or a
hmm,
contract negotiator or a
yeah,
bus
like
driver or a
you
merch
gotta wear all the
designer.
hats, man. It's crazy.
Right. And so some people are really good at it, and it was around the time that we got out of high school that the shift happened, and we were a little few years after that, where social media, smartphones, streaming, digital downloads, the iPod comes out, like all those things happened within a few years of each other, and it totally turned the music industry as we knew it upside down. Right before then, you had to get signed, you had to go to Hollywood or New York or Nashville,
Yeah,
you had to pay all this money to get a music video done, or to have
man.
like a stylist or a public relations person, or all these things. And all of a sudden, almost overnight, you could do it all yourself
Yeah,
from your basement, and all you needed
exactly.
was like a camcorder or an iPhone or whatever. And
Hmm.
for better or for worse, right around the time we were getting into our early 20s is when everything changed. And so on one hand, it was like sad to see that things changing. On the other hand, it was exciting because it's like we don't have any more gatekeepers. We don't have any more middlemen. We can do this ourselves. That was
Yeah,
the beauty of what allowed YouTube to really take off. It was like cat videos and videos of people doing covers, like with a guitar in their basement and terrible lighting
yeah,
and no
man,
mics.
for
But you were
real.
part of it, bro. You were part of it.
I was trying, and I mean, it was a good journey, but I think for me, it was really difficult because I didn't really know who I was,
Yeah,
and like it was really hard for me to figure out who my identity,
yeah,
and I think I was just kind of bandwagoning off like inspiration, like Music Soul Child and stuff like that.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
I would always get like, "Oh, you sound like Music Soul Child," you know. Of course, man, because I listen to them all the time. It wasn't like,
That's what I'm
man,
going for.
yeah, yeah. It wasn't like, man, there's. I don't think I was as original as I could have been. You know, like it was hard for me
Yeah,
to find the originality in myself.
I feel that. I think a lot of artists, very rarely do you have an artist that is just so talented and so just just raw and just unafraid to be who they are, right? And
Hmm.
a lot of artists do struggle with that imposter syndrome, or it's easier to just be a cover band, or it's
Yeah,
easier to just hide in a choir, or whatever the case may be. But to really put your face and your voice and your thoughts, out there, that's about as vulnerable as it gets. That's why the people that are really good at it get we elevate to those
right.
high levels because they deserve to be there, because it is not easy to take all of your own stuff and put yourself out there like that. um,
Exactly.
but you're right, there was kind of in the absence of the traditional record labels, there was kind of a gap in services and support. And I kind of did it half-assed, but my vision was always to do that for artists, and I kind of ended up doing it, but never really fully going for it myself either, as a artist or as a starting a label or anything like that. But my whole goal was to basically provide the services that a traditional record label would provide, but without controlling the artist and their art,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so like I said, we kind of dabbled in it a little bit, but just never really fully came to fruition, because and it broke my heart, because I saw friends and artists and bands that got taken advantage of or missed their
Hmm.
boat because they mismanaged an opportunity. And that was happening a lot in the late 2000s, early
Oh
2010s.
yeah, left and right.
Yeah, so when did you feel like, what were some projects where you worked on where you were like, okay, now we're starting to like play some real gigs. We're starting to like get some real opportunities. Like, what were some of those moments where you're like, dang, was it like views on a video? Was it comments, or was it like a
I
live
think
gig?
no, I think yeah, I think it's more of the live music scene aspect, because that's when I was able to formulate a band and put some guys together to actually like play music like really really well.
Mm-hmm.
Like these are art like these like musicians that I used to play with. Now they play for Dwelle, they play
Yep.
for um what's his name? Another artist, but like that's how great they were. You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
and I kind of like I was like, dang, I'm singing with these guys. Like
Dude,
they're playing for me. Like that's crazy,
I,
man.
I remember living in Southern California for a little while. And just on like a Monday night at a hotel cafe or somewhere like that, you'd have these bands that were touring with, Lil Wayne or Justin Timberlake or whatever, but they're in town and they're on their break, and they would just come jam on a Monday night at a random little bar in Hollywood, and you're just like,
Yeah.
what the dude? and
So
so it
so
was,
talented, man.
it was a vibe in those days. Like I said, like you know, probably '07 to 2014, 15. It was kind of a
Yeah.
cool window in time in the Northwest too. There's some really good venues there in Seattle,
Yeah,
and
man.
I
Remember
was
like Michael Wassman and
oh yeah, that's right,
dude,
Mike. That's right.
so
And
so dope.
yeah, what are the siblings, the brother and sister, Tess Henley.
Oh yeah, Henley. Yeah.
She made some moves. Michael Wassman made some moves. There was some cool. But dude,
Yeah.
look at Alan Stone, man.
I know.
We used to do shows with them at the pop up. Shout out to the Seattle Secret shows, to the Watt sisters. They really had a cool little movement. Started off just little
Yeah,
living room shows. All of a sudden, it
exactly.
was like these warehouse like pop ups, and a lot of the artists that we worked with in California ended up coming to Seattle, and then a lot of those Seattle artists, one of them being Alan Stone, just blew up, man.
Yeah,
And it's
man.
pretty cool how that all worked out.
Exactly.
there's
No,
always been there's always been a special connection, I think, like between the Bay Area and the Northwest.
definitely.
Is from music to food to sports, all that. So
Hmm.
okay, music was a big part of your life. We met through it. We had some great experiences. We've done some shows together. um, Talk about that time. I think we were already friends, or maybe this is how we became friends. We were like friends on social media maybe, and we hadn't met yet in person, I want to say.
Yeah.
And so Jeremy was coming into town because Jeremy Passion was Joe Coy, who's
Yeah,
a
he was opening.
famous comedian from
Yeah,
Tacoma, Washington, right? He's huge now. Joe at the time, not everybody knows this, but Joe's a huge fan of R&B, right? He grew up and he puts it in his show. Like he talks about
yeah,
90s R&B, it's just not the same. And so he found Jeremy probably online and invited him to tour with him. And it's funny because Jeremy's the most like quiet, unassuming, humble, like grew up in church, like not not really like a brash or obnoxious comedian type
right.
environment that he's normally would you would see him at, right? And so all of a sudden Jeremy's on tour, opening up for Joe and going around the world doing that, which was pretty cool. And they happened to be coming into Seattle. So said, hey, come out to the show. And I said, oh, yeah, I'll pick you up at the airport. So I go to pick him up at the airport at SeaTac Airport, like a few hours before a sold out show at the, I want to say Moore Theater there
More theater.
downtown.
Yep,
Yeah,
yep.
downtown Seattle. And he gets the guitar off of the, I'm sure you've dealt with this traveling as a musician. His guitar like broke en route from San Francisco to Seattle. Like something happened with the neck getting, they don't treat your luggage very
Yeah,
good
yeah. They just
in
throw
the
it all
airports.
around.
So all of a sudden he's like, bro, do you have a guitar? Do you know anyone that has a guitar? Is there any music shops open? But it was like already late. So it was like we weren't going to be able
Yeah,
to just go to Guitar
scrambling.
Center or whatever. So we're scrambling. And I don't know if must have put it out on Facebook maybe. And sure enough, within like 20 minutes, a boy Nate came through and was like, I got you. I got a Martin, whatever. It's good to go. So you rush in. And I remember because Joe was still doing his warm up and like walk through and sound check. And we get you in there and you come through the back door and you walk in, you're like, dude, Joe Coy's warming up. Jeremy's there. That you saved the day. You brought the guitar, showing off without a hitch. No one would have known the difference. But
Yeah,
you came
that
in
was
that
that
day
was
and you saved the
dope.
day. And I was like, hey, you want to stay? And you're like, yeah, I think I want to stay.
I just wanted to get my guitar back, man.
Yeah, of course, of course. But
Just
I mean, how was that from your perspective?
no,
How was that night?
that was dope. Actually, before that, we actually opened up my R&B group, Soulify. We opened up for Joe Coy in Seattle
Nice.
like years prior. And he poked a joke at us because he was like, "Man, that R&B group could sing so good, man, but there's that one dude, he got some big ass eyebrows, huh?" And he brought the mic up and he put it up to his eyebrows, and I was like, "Man, he's talking about me, man, because I got some thick eyebrows, you know." And I was like
He's just
singing "We
jealous, bro. He's
Is."
just jealous because he's
No,
been
it's
bald
cool, man.
since the
That
90s.
was a
No.
compliment. That was a compliment. So it's cool to to see him in that element on a bigger,
Well, yeah, speaking of Musik Socha, I remember so after the show, we went to the after party, some club or bar down the street or whatever. And then he got on the mic, Joe got on the mic and was singing Musik Socha for the after party.
that's right.
And yeah, that
Oh,
was, oh
that
man.
was a really that was a dope experience, man. Thank you for
Well, no,
having.
thank you. You saved the day. And that's the thing. It's like I somehow found myself, and I think it's part of our calling, individually and together, like, just being people who've traveled, being people who've been a part of like situations where you had to be like professional, where you had to be aware and like a problem solver and like
Yeah,
keep your cool. Um, and that was one of those moments where, I'd already been working in music. I'd already kind of been putting out fires and dealing with concerts and tours. And it was just another one of those situations where other people would have freaked out. Some artists I know would have just canceled and said, I'm not performing. They would have thrown a fit. They would have like been still yelling at the airline or whatever, you know. Um, and for me, like to have people that I can trust to like come through, because a lot of people want to say, a lot of people will hit you up for, oh, hey, can I get on the guest list? Or hey, can you give me a shout out? Or but not a lot of people are like, hey, let me know if you need any help. Like, let me know what I can do to support or whatever. Right. And so right there, I was like, oh, this guy's a real one. He's solid. He came through and
that's
didn't
right.
and for anything, and it worked out great. And you really did save the day. And I don't even know if Joe realized it, but Jeremy for sure did. That was kind of the beginning of a great friendship. I know we hung out a lot for the rest of that year that I was living in Seattle. And then you had the opportunity on a whim. You were able to come down to California and
Yeah,
kind of see
man,
because
Monterey,
you came and
dude.
saw Monterey. What did you think of Monterey? And then
Dude,
tell
man,
tell everybody about that last minute trip we took down to LA while you were in Monterey.
Dude, the car drive and going to what was that? Michael Blue, was that his
Yep,
name?
yep, yep,
At Michael Blue's studio and just seeing all those artists perform, man, like and seeing like the plaques up there and Kobe Calais' record
yep,
and
yep.
it just made everything more real, like
Well,
actually putting
so
yourself in that position.
what I was saying earlier about how, that timing when I had moved on from the church and my parents had split up and ended a relationship that I was in that I thought was going to be the one, and all these things happened all at once, and it was like I was just kind of disillusioned and confused, and so this the music scene and the nightlife scene, I really found kind of an escape in that world and became a different person, and needed that. It helped me
Yeah.
survive. I was really depressed, and I was just like, it got me through a lot. And just that whole scene being all, it's all connected, and it's crazy because one of the first artists that I found on MySpace and YouTube, people like Tyrone Wells and Ernie Halter and
Oh
Colby
yeah.
Calais. And so I
Yeah.
remember listening to all their albums when we would still buy CDs, listening to their CDs, driving up and down the coast for work and just going through that time in my life. And then all of a sudden I'm starting to meet these people and like be at shows with them and go on tours with them. And I'm like, oh, dude, so crazy how it came full circle. That's kind of what happened with Jeremy and a lot of those people. And it's funny because that scene was a beautiful moment in time. Some of those artists have gone on to do big things, but it was not really like a, the electronic scene kind of took over. All of a sudden DJs were like the big thing, and so like the
Mhm.
singer songwriter scene was never going to be as big as like
Yeah.
EDC or Burning Man or something like that. But for that little window of time where we had it,
Oh man,
those coffee shop vibes and those
it was
YouTube
big to
videos,
us, bro. It
it
was
was
big
big
to
to
us.
us,
And that's
exactly.
all
And
that
so
mattered.
when we got
Yeah.
to go to that show in LA, it was like the who's who was there. A
Yeah.
friend of mine named Angelique Shepard, they were putting on this thing called Blue and Green, and it was just like her husband Dave, he played keys with Bruno Mars. I mean, it was like they were all. It was like this whole. It was a scene. And I
It
know I've
was.
watched movies about like disco and hard rock and what it was like in the '70s and the '80s, and that was our little
Hmm.
moment, right?
That
So
was, man.
I
That
I was
was an
just grateful
experience.
that. And I remember when I got the call and I was like, wow, bro, I don't have a car right now. I don't know how. I was broke. We had a mansion somehow. And one of my roommates, he had a two-seater, shout out to
That's
Mitch,
right.
a two-seater car, and we were three big dudes. And we're like, well, all right, what if I pay for gas down and up and meals? Can we smash to LA and back tonight?
Man.
Which is about 5-6 hours away.
Yep.
And you're like, all right, let's do it. And so us three crammed into this little clown car, so the two-door Honda Prelude, and we smashed down to LA and back in the same night.
Wow.
And it was a rough ride, but once we got there, it was like, and it was funny because I knew Mitch, that wasn't really his scene. He didn't say much all night, but you and I were like kids in a candy store, like all excited.
Yeah.
And at the end of it, we look and we're like, hey, bro, sorry, man. Like, are you cool? Like, what did you think? And he was like, this was the best night of my life. We're like, oh, okay, good. Because I thought you
Oh,
were all like pissed
yeah.
and thought you wasted a trip. But he was like, no, this is like the coolest thing I've ever done.
Yeah. No, we,
And
we we definitely created a brotherhood that night.
yeah, yeah. So
Um,
that was that's one of my best music memories for sure. Just that whole era, that whole trip. But came back home, kind of got into more of the behind the scenes, stopped playing as much music and was more like festivals and different events. And then you kind of slowed down on music and got into kind of your second chapter, which was a lot, I'm sure a lot of things all combined, but from afar, what it looked like was you found your wife and you started a food related business. So take us to that part of the story.
yeah, well, I was still doing shows around Seattle, but can't make money out here. It's hard to make money out here
It's
as a
hard out here for a player.
musician,
Yeah.
and so I was making like $400 a night, but then I'd have to split it between all four band members. So
Exactly.
I go
Exactly.
home with like a Big Mac.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, so I met my wife at the time, and she had a kid, and things were getting serious, and so I was like, man, I gotta figure something out, man. Like this music thing ain't doing it. So I tried applying for Boeing, but I failed the interview. Um, and so I had to go back to the drawing board, and I was in a work source meeting. Um, just trying to figure out, like what the next steps are. But I just couldn't concentrate, man. Like my mind just couldn't focus on the screen.
Hmm.
And so I put my head down and I just started to pray. For some reason, I just asked God, like, hey, God, what do you want me to do for the rest of my life? Like, I guess it was a really big question, but he gave me an answer. And at that time, like food trucks wasn't even a scene back then.
That's true. That's true.
And
You were
so,
early on.
yeah, and so I heard like start a food truck business, you know? And I was like, what? Start a food truck
You
business?
sure
Like,
you weren't
how?
just hungry? No.
Yeah, no, I probably was, bro. I probably was. I'm always hungry for sure. But yeah, so I was like, how do I do that? And I was just trying to go through my catalog of like phone numbers and stuff, who to think about. And I remember one of my friends, his parents actually operated a food truck business. Like they're like one of those, they call it roach coach.
Hmm.
When you go to like warehouse to warehouse and
Yep.
sell burgers and
Yep.
fried stuff.
Oh
But
yeah, they're very popular here in California.
yeah, yeah, yeah. They actually got their truck from California.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I asked him about it and he was like, "Hey man, if you're down with like sweating and grease and working hard, getting home late, waking up early, like everything that you probably don't want to hear."
Yeah.
He
Kept
was
it
like,
real.
then it's for you. And I was like, "Well, I think this is for me." And so I asked him if he knew anyone that was selling a food truck, and he actually did. And so the next day after that work source meeting, I was able to check out the food truck. And then I asked the lady how much she was selling it for, and I was like, damn, I don't got that kind of money. But, you know, everything was aligned, man. It was crazy because 4 months before that, my aunt came to town to visit, and she saw how I like to cook because I was cooking dinner in the kitchen. And then she was like, "Hey Nate, if you ever want help with anything, let me know." And I'm like, "What do you mean by help?" Like
That's
I, I
awesome.
don't I don't I don't like asking for help. But this opportunity came, and so I was like, "You know what? Let me ask my aunt, see if she'll help me out." And I was like, "Hey auntie, can you wire me like 60K or 80K?" And that
She
was
said, I thought you meant help in the kitchen, not help like that.
right, right. No. And
Shout out to Auntie.
exactly, man. And so she was like, "Yeah, I'll wire over 60K right away." And I needed
Wow.
I needed 20K left. And my girlfriend at the time, or my wife, I knew she had a little bit of savings too. And so I was like, "Hey, I know we've just been dating for like, 4 months, but can I borrow that 10K that you had stashed up?"
Wow.
And thankfully she was like, "Here you go." So like everything
Dang.
just lined up, and then the remaining balance, of course, I was able to pay over time. But I still didn't know what the heck I was doing, man. Like no business experience. All I knew was like cooking in my own at my parents' house, and I was just trying to figure it out. But eventually we got it
So,
down.
how'd you get the idea for the style of food that you were going to do?
Honestly, I can't take credit for it, man. My wife, she has some pretty off the wall ideas, and one day, like because we were doing the food truck route where we were going from business to business.
Right.
And just we pretty much had the same menu that the prior owner was doing. And I was like, man, we can't keep doing this, man. Like we got to do something different,
Mm,
because like we're not really making much, doing this whatever we're doing. And it was already like 2 years already, and by that time my parents were already telling me to sell the business. Like I was getting all this negative feedback from
mm.
everybody, like, man, like I don't think you could do it, blah blah blah. And but I was like, man, I'm not gonna listen to that. I gotta figure this out. And I was talking to my wife about it, and she was like, "Hey, why don't we make a pandesal sandwich?" And if you don't know what pandesal is, it's a Filipino sweet bread
Mm.
that we usually eat for breakfast.
Oh, that sounds good.
Yeah, and super moist, super soft when you warm it up. And I was like, when she told me that, I was like, I don't know, that sounds kind of weird. But she went in the back of the food truck, she whipped up a fried chicken sandwich with it. And bro, like that changed my taste buds, man. And I was like, dude, this is it. So,
Shout out to your wife.
dude, for real, I hit a pot of gold, more than a pot of gold, man. But yeah, so from there we started doing that chicken sandwich and breakfast sandwiches with, the pandesal and everything, and then all these different ideas just started coming, like doing burritos with chicken adobo and rice bowls and stuff like that. And then a few years
So
later,
like different takes on Filipino traditional food.
yeah, yeah. And just, kind of doing that fusion style, which a lot of people weren't really open to back then.
Yeah.
And so we're facing a lot of challenges with that too, because they'd come up to our truck and they're like, "This isn't Filipino food, blah blah blah." But I was like, "Hey man, we're just trying to switch it up, man. We're just trying to
That's
like
weird because
introduce
we're
something."
not in the Philippines. We're in Seattle.
Exactly. But now like everything is fusion now, bro. Like
Yes,
we
totally.
fusion everything, and it was cool to
One of the
see,
most popular burritos in California has French fries in it.
right? Yeah, a California burrito. No, but it was cool to see how the scene evolved, because we're one of, I mean, I just found out this, but one of the chefs over here in Seattle, he was like, "Man, you guys were one of the pioneers in the food truck
You
business."
were. You
And
were.
I was like, "Man, I never really looked at it that way." I was just,
How did social media? I know I watched it from afar, but it seemed like you guys blew up on Instagram.
"Oh yeah, no, it was great, man." I mean, we really made it a mission to keep everyone connected and, take pictures of everybody and just show our appreciation for everybody that came out. And what was difficult though is that we didn't have a King County permit. We're in Pierce County. And
Ah,
so that was why it was so hard for us to like cross that line. Like we were literally on the line of Pierce County and King County just so we could be like closer to,
yeah.
the people in King County. But yeah, we're just trying to make the best of it, and but I do remember the first location that we were parked at for like our first year. I told my wife, I was like, "Man, like we're gonna drive past this one day and we'll have a restaurant, we'll have this, we'll have that." And now here we are, and
So yeah. So then what happened? Tell us what happened next.
yeah, so I mean, we had some babies. we we had some babies, man, and
Chicken sandwiches are an aphrodisiac.
they are.
Those
We
close quarters inside of a food truck will either make you hate each other or draw you
Oh,
closer.
bro, sometimes I'd be driving by myself, or vice versa, man. It
Yeah,
was,
yeah,
but like being business owners together, and like as husband and wife, it really gave us like a crash course
yeah,
of marriage, and
yeah.
like
Teamwork.
really, yeah, teamwork and figuring each other out, and just really, now that I look back, I'm like, damn, I was a stubborn mother, man. Like
Yeah.
like my pride was so high back then. And man, now just to see everything that she went through for us to get to where we're at, like, dude, I don't know, man. I know I'm talking about her a lot, but
Well, as you should.
yeah, she really
I can relate. That's the process my wife and I've been at. Where we grew up together, went to liked each other in high school, and kept in touch as adults, but we didn't actually officially start dating until about 4 years ago, and got married about 3 years ago. So yeah, and like you said, we started off in a small apartment, kind of like a small food truck, and you know what, you go to that corner, I'm gonna go to that corner.
yeah,
I love you, I'll see you tomorrow. you know?
man.
And sometimes you gotta do that.
Yeah, no, but it's been an amazing experience, man. Like we were able to open a restaurant, of course. And then after that, we opened up a poke shop. And then after that, we opened up a ice cream donut shop. Unfortunately, those businesses didn't work out, but the experience
Yeah.
was cool,
So now you have the truck and the restaurant.
Yeah, now we have the truck and the restaurant. But right now we're just operating the restaurant because like we're just, now that we're a little bit more seasoned and
Yeah.
like we're just
Pun
valuing,
intended.
yeah, we're valuing time, you know what I
Yes.
mean? And
Yes.
and we really want to be there with our kids and watch them grow up, and
Yeah.
and I mean things are working out.
I'm so glad to hear that, man. And I was proud to watch your journey from afar. And I think got to try it one time. I think me and Chad were able to link up with you last time we were both up there, up in we were doing a thing in Kirkland, and I want to say we tried it. We made an effort to go see you and try your food when it was just the truck. But um, I mean, shout out to wives, right? And it's like I have this firm belief, like you want to win with the ones that suffered with you, the ones that like fought with you, and that's kind of
Yeah.
now that you're having that success, you know how much of it you owe to her, and there's just
Bro.
that unspoken and hopefully spoken, just that respect of like, hey man, we were in the trenches together, literally, and now look at what we built, and whether it's the children, whether it's the business, um, and now you're in that mode, and I can relate. I think maybe it's turning 40 where you're like, ambition is different. The ambition is to find peace, to have control of your time, to not have to spend time or energy with people or situations that you don't
Yeah.
want to.
Yeah, it's
And I
pretty
think
crazy.
that's the new rich, right? Before it was like, oh, I want to be famous, I want to make all this money. It's like I just want freedom,
Hmm. Yeah.
freedom to choose how I spend my time, who I spend my time with. So, and then
Mhm.
be able to have those creative pursuits, whether it's through food or through music.
Yeah.
So it's awesome that you've been able to achieve that, man. That's awesome.
Oh, thank you, man. Thank you. Likewise, bro. I
So
mean, that
what? Thanks, man. So what? This kind of accidental goal that you were successful at. What what is the name of your new restaurant, and where can people find it? And when are you going to open one in California?
man, that is a really awesome question. So right now, my wife and I we're kind of in a transition. Um, she actually got sick last May, and we really had to figure out what was going on because she had like all these gut issues and
Mm,
just these symptoms that doctors couldn't even
kind of
explain.
obscure. Yeah.
Yeah, and so we had to take a deep dive, and we were actually traveling back and forth to California these past few months, and we were able to get some answers, and now
Oh,
she's
good.
feeling a lot better. But now that we kind of studied a lot about our bodies and food and everything, and how eating the right things are really important, because a lot of the processed stuff really hurts you over time, and a lot of
Hmm.
the oils, seed oils and stuff that
Yep.
we're eating, all the fried food. I was
Which
like,
is a big part of the menu with food trucks.
oh, huge. And so now we're like, man, we can't be feeding this to people. Like we really want to um feed not necessarily healthier options, but just more natural food,
Yeah.
more fresh, and organic. And so we visited a couple farms around the area. We've talked to some farmers. We've talked to some local grocery produces, and seeing how we could source things. And we're kind of switching up our business model a little bit and introducing more natural food
That's awesome.
items on our menu. So
That's
yeah.
awesome. It's part of the evolution process, man. You
Yeah, yeah,
can't,
yeah. So we're,
once
I mean,
you know, you can't deny
yeah.
it,
So we're definitely still, in the transition. We haven't gone full force with it yet, but like I want people to enjoy like a Philly cheesesteak sandwich and not feel guilty,
Right,
not feel like, oh man, I'm eating like, bad oils and,
right,
or even tacos, you know what I mean?
right.
That are grass-fed beef and like fresh organic produce and organic tortillas and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Well, now
Oh,
everything's expensive. You might as well just go for it.
right. Exactly.
It's
No, that's all
like
I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. Like, dude, you'll pay the same thing at McDonald's for the same price,
that's what's crazy. Even fast food is
Yeah,
expensive now, so it's like
yeah,
might as well eat healthy.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, that's our mission, is make that transition to you know, offering a more natural food to people and kind of educating them how it's so important to eat that way because
Yeah,
it's kind of like a it's kind of like one of those you know s- uh hidden hidden um things that you don't necessarily see,
yeah,
because it gets you over time, when
totally.
you eat certain things.
Well, it's like, taking your creative spin on traditional recipes, but now with better ingredients, now that you're more conscious
Yeah,
about it. And if that means that you need to charge a little bit more, people will pay it. And if that means
yeah,
that you
yeah.
need to adjust your margins a little bit. I mean, you'll make it work because you'll feel better about what you're
Yeah,
bringing to the
no,
market.
I mean, it's
It's
brought
a
my
win-win.
my wife healing, because
Yeah,
we just cook at home now, and that's all I do, and she's felt so much better, and of course she's, taking supplements and,
yeah,
doing certain things to help out. But what we eat is really important. So
100%.
yeah,
100%. It's definitely something that, you know, in those years of being on the road, being in nightlife and being in entertainment, I definitely let that go by the wayside. And it was
yeah,
just
no,
like
it's easy.
I
It's
just work,
easy.
work, work. And so
It's
as
easy,
hard as I
man.
worked is as hard as I drank and as hard as I ate and
Yeah, I was the
paid the
same
price
way.
for it. So now at 40, it's kind of like, okay, it's time to get our health right. It's time to get our money
Yeah,
right. And
yeah.
fortunately, we both were able to partner with awesome partners, so that makes it easier and motivates you to stick around a little longer because some of us have friends and parents that didn't make it very long,
Oh, dude,
and
yeah.
like you said, we only get one shot at this, so it's important we take care of ourselves. But man, we could go on for hours. We're literally birthday twins, literally born on the same day, probably the same time. We've had so many awesome experiences, and I hope, I really mean it. I hope to stay in touch and meet your kids
Oh, for
and hopefully
sure.
meet mine one day. And if you guys are ever in this area, Monterey Bay, please let us know. And next time we're up in Seattle, we'll let you know. And we'd
Please
love for
do,
our
man.
wives to meet.
You got a room, bro.
Yeah, thank you, man. Same. Well, where can people find your old music? Because
Ooh.
I love the old stuff. And then also, where can people find your new project and the restaurant and all that?
Yeah, so the music, I think I have some on SoundCloud. But I mean, and YouTube, of course.
Under
Um,
Nate Vibes.
you're right, under Nate
Okay.
Vibes, but I definitely need to update that area. As far as the food truck goes, we just do a bunch of like events and corporate events and weddings and concerts and stuff. So that's where you could catch us. We're not really like out and about in the street too much.
Okay. What about on social media? Where can people find you?
On social media, it's I want some big boys, and it's that's about it, man.
That's
I
about it.
mean, yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, please give my best to your wife. Thank you so much for joining me tonight, and
Oh,
we'll keep the
likewise, man.
conversation going. I can't wait to try some of your food.
Oh, for sure. All right,
All right,
brother.
brother. Take care.
Yeah, you too, man.